Hello and welcome to our Lava Lamp Lab presentation with Josh Enstead.
And Ryan Vrabel.
Alright, we're going to get started with a background on the history of lava lamps to begin.
So looking at the history of the lava lamp, it was first invented in 1963 by the man named Edward Craven Walker. He saw it from watching a homemade egg timer which was made from a cocktail shaker, which was filled with liquids, as it was bubbling on a stovetop in a pub. A classic lava lamp contains a standard halogen lamp which heats a tall glass bottle. Usually at the bottom is a copper wire, which we will get later into our presentation. But in 1968, the formula consisted of water, mineral oil, perforin wax, and carbon tetrachloride. However, in 1970, carbon tetrachloride was removed from the formula due to its toxicity. So there's a new formula, but it's considered a trade secret, so there is no formula that is easily able to find. But the bulb that is heated for the lava lamp is usually from 25 to 40 watts, and usually takes about 40 to 60 minutes to heat.
And in our research, we did find some people claim to have cracked this formula, the trade secret.
Oh, they did?
But they do not have any proof for sure if it is that same one, but it still seems to work for them.
Oh, all right. So now we're going to go into more in depth into our presentation. Now Josh is going to take us into our I'm going over minerals. Okay, so for our minerals we had copper wire, which we will talk more about that, flask, test tubes, and like I said, we used a 40-watt bulb, isopropyl, water, and mineral oil. Now with the isopropyl, we used 100%, but when we were doing our tests, we used also 71% and 90%, but we eventually diluted our 100% isopropyl, which was what, to 70?
76.
76, okay.
76%.
All right.
All right, so we're going to get into the process of how we went through our experiments and observations. To begin with, eventually we found the density was obviously very important for this experiment. Finding that isopropyl was at the 0.78 grams per milliliter, water at the common 1 gram per milliliter. Water is what we use to distinguish density since it's at the 1 gram. And we found that a mixture of isopropyl and water coming to a 0.83 grams per milliliter density was the perfect place to have it, since as you can see, what we used, the oil, was at 0.85 grams per milliliter at the common room temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. So how that works then is the solution is able to be above the oil, since it's just barely lighter, less dense than the oil. But once the oil is heated up, the density goes down and even lower than the solution, which then causes the oil to be raised in that solution.
We had to do a lot of mixing and stuff to finally get that right proportion out to get the density.
A lot of tests and finding that right proportion. So that proportion then that we found was the 76% of isopropyl alcohol, the mixture of 100% with the correct amount of water. Since we know that the oil cannot mix, it's insoluble with the mixture of the isopropyl and water. As you can see in that picture there's some of the dye that we decided to use that's being mixed in there. It's able to mix with the water and the isopropyl, but it's not able to mix with the oil, just as the oil can't mix with the water and isopropyl.
I think it's like that too with classic lava lamps or store-bought ones, that the wax you can see in there is clear, but the colors that's in there, once you kind of see the wax hit the side, you can tell that's white, and it doesn't really have a color. So, so if you are seeing a lava lamp, the wax is not, or material is not colored, it's just the liquid inside.
And then having to do with that, the reason why they don't mix is because of polarity. You can see on the top left there, that's a molecule of water. In the middle, that's a molecule of isopropyl. And it's pretty easy if you're a chemist to recognize that these are polar molecules. And knowing that the mineral oil is nonpolar, you know that these two cannot mix. And there's an image on the right showing one of our room temperature tests, finding that perfect ratio between water and isopropyl, where we got it to be, the oil was floating just above the bottom of the test tube, and that was exactly where we wanted it.
I think we took a couple of days just trying to get the right proportion out.
Yep, that proportion was a little difficult, sometimes frustrating even. And then we have our color. Like I said before, we decided to go with orange. On the right you see the mixture of the two dyes. It's the red and red and yellow, making the orange. And really this has no major effect on the workability of the lava lamp. All it does is give it that beauty effect. It gives it something nice to look at besides two clear liquids. And then here's the process. We really needed it to be warmed so that the oil was then able to rise, having that lower density. And the temperature needed to get above or to 40 degrees Celsius in order for that to happen.
Now with this copper ring in here, what could you expand more on why it's important to have the copper wire in there for the whole temperature process?
Yeah, the copper ring, when we were doing some observations on the store-bought lava lamps, we noticed that there was a coiled ring of metal on the bottom of each one inside the glass, and realizing that this was to keep any heat, or the majority of the heat, down at the bottom of the glass, so that the heat wouldn't be able to distribute too much. So then once the oil's heated up on the bottom where most of the heat is, and it rises, along with having the coil on the bottom keeping most of the heat at the bottom, and also it tapering up to the top.
But then once it kind of gets up there, kind of cools down and drops back down,
right,
and kind of goes through the whole heating process again. So
yeah. So with that, we'd like to show you a quick video of our working lava lamp. So here you see the oil is able to easily move up, cool down, go back down to where the majority of that oil is, and the coil is able to heat it right back up.
So now we're going to go ahead and look at one of our test runs for our first one. This one here actually was successful. As you can see in the tube, we have the copper wire at the bottom. And this was actually the correct ratio, wasn't it, Josh? This was...
It was, yeah.
The 73%, or is it 76% isopropyl?
It was 76%.
76. So you can see the copper wire, and you can see that the heat, mostly at the bottom, as the mineral oil rises and it cools, it comes back down. So this was a successful run for us. So
this then concludes our video for today. I hope that this inspires you to go out and do some interesting observations and also some experiments in any kind of field of science.
Also, you don't have to take LSD to get a thrive off looking at a lava lamp as well. So we'll conclude with our video. So be well, do good work, and keep in touch.